I am fully aware that there are other folding phones available on the market besides the Z Fold and the Pixel Fold. You have Vivo, Honor, Xiaomi, all of these other companies, Oppo, making fantastic folding phones. But the reality is, for most of you watching my content, it's going to come down to the Z Fold or the Pixel Fold. And now that the Z Fold 7 has been fully unveiled and we have seen it and we know what it's like and we know what it can do and what it can't do, I think for a lot of people, the attention is now turning towards the Pixel 10 Pro Fold. I started this poll right after the Z Fold 7 was fully unveiled, and I think that some of you might find these results a little bit surprising considering how negative my comment section has been. We have 66% of people saying that the phone looks very solid but not quite perfect, and then another 14% saying it's the perfect phone. That's 80% of people leaning somewhere between very solid and perfect. And then you have 20% of people somewhere between disappointing, too many flaws, and the worst phone I've ever seen. So 80% of people seem to think that this device does look pretty darn solid. But keep in mind that doesn't mean that 80% of respondents are going to buy the phone. I think that due to some of the decisions that Samsung has made with the Z Fold, some of the realities around that device, the door is open for Google to make some serious headway. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to dig in and talk about exactly what Google could do with the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, given what we now know about the Z Fold 7, to actually take an even bigger bite out of their market share. I think that the first most obvious thing that we need to look at is the price of these devices. That's going to be a deciding factor for a lot of people. The Z Fold 7 is now starting at $1,999.99. That is a $2,000 phone. Once upon a time, it was $17.99, then it was $18.99, now it's $19.99. It is a very, very expensive device. Of course, the Pixel 9 Pro Fold was $17.99. That's a $200 difference, and that is, I think, pretty substantial. But maybe, just maybe, it'll be a bigger gap than that. We had this report back in April from Android Headlines, and if we scroll down, they talk about Google's plans to slowly bring down the price of the Pixel Fold line. Here's an important paragraph. Surprisingly, the Pixel Fold model will actually drop in price by the time we get to 2028. It is expected to be priced around $1,500 in 2028. The Pixel 10 Pro Fold is expected to drop to around $1,600. If that were to happen, and the Pixel 10 Pro Fold is $1,599 and the Z Fold 7 is $1,999, that is absolutely going to cause people to say, look, the Fold 7 looks great, but the Pixel is so much cheaper and it looks really good. I'm going to buy the Pixel. Now, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I do want to say this. I don't personally think that that is actually going to happen. I do not think we're going to get the Pixel 10 Pro Fold for $1,600. I actually wrote this all up in an article on ShaneCraig.tech yesterday, and then after I posted this, Roland Quant over on Blue Sky posted this, just a list of prices, and they have the Pixel 10 Pro Fold at 18.99 euros. That is the exact same price as last year. So I think that there is some good reason to assume the report from Android Headlines probably not going to be accurate, and we're probably going to have a $200 difference between the Pixel 10 Pro Fold and the Z Fold 7. Still significant, but not as significant as what Android Headlines is reporting. It's not impossible. I'm going to give you both reports, but I'm going to tell you that I think that this one is probably the accurate one. I will give you guys a little bit of some information that might be interesting. You guys know that I have affiliate links for the Z Fold 7, and quite a few of you have clicked my link to make your purchase. And I want to first off just say massive, tremendous, huge thank you for that. You guys have no idea how much that actually does help me in my own life and doing this channel and paying my bills. It's amazing. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because in that I can actually see what everyone's paying. I can't see like who you are or your card information, but I can see they paid this and this is your commission. And I've sold quite a few Z Fold 7s in the last couple of days, and I'm not kidding. Literally one of you that I can see has paid full price. So we make a big deal about it being $19.99, but none of you are paying $19.99. I've got the list pulled up here. I'm not going to show you because I don't want to show you my commission because that's something I don't want to get into. But I'm looking at this. $10.99, $14.49, $12.06, $10.96. No one's paying the full price. I paid the full price because I'm a doofus, but just getting that out of the way. When the Pixel 10 Pro Fold launches, what the trade-in values are and those sorts of things, that is also going to play into the pricing part of this conversation. That's my point. But obviously, there's much more to a phone than just the price. I've got a very sort of brief breakdown here that we can quickly go through to kind of compare these phones. Obviously, Samsung uses the Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy, and Google is using the Tensor G5. And there's going to be a fairly substantial gap between these two processors. I think that the Tensor G5 is going to be a big improvement. This is the first time that they're being fabricated by TSMC. I believe this is a 3 nanometer process, which I believe the 8 Elite is also a 3 nanometer process, but it's not going to be as good as the Snapdragon 8 Elite. It's going to be faster, it's going to be more efficient, and that means better battery life, and that also means better with heat production. That's part of efficiency. If your processor is generating excess heat, that is power being lost. That is a sign of inefficiency. So I think it's going to be improved, but they're just not going to be as performant and as efficient as the Snapdragon 8 Elite. Will the average user notice a huge difference? No, but is there going to be a difference? Yes, of course there will be. What about in terms of the build? The Z Fold 7 is going to be both thinner and very likely lighter, 4.2 millimeters thick, only 215 grams. It is right there with the Oppo Find N5, and that is something that is very, very exciting for me. This phone in your pocket is going to feel like you're using any other slab phone around. The S25 Ultra is within a millimeter of that width, and it's actually heavier than the Z Fold 7. Some of you don't care about that stuff, but I definitely do. I'm going to point it out for those obvious reasons. The Pixel does appear like it's going to be effectively the exact same device. The thickness, the width, the height, all of those dimensions look like they're going to be absolutely identical. Hopefully they can get the weight down. It's 257 grams, and that is entirely too heavy in 2025. Hopefully they can bring that down. But when you talk about the design, I don't think you can really argue that the Z Fold 7 doesn't have a better design. And I don't mean in terms of like subjectively which one you like the look of better. That is absolutely subjective. But Samsung's phone is thinner and it's lighter, and I think that that matters. In terms of the screens, they both are likely to use an 8-inch inner display. The Z Fold 7 does have a 6.5-inch cover screen, and the Pixel 10 Pro Fold is likely to still be around 6.3 inches. It might get a little bit wider, so maybe it's closer to 6.4, 6.5, making it even more similar. One thing that I actually should add to this is that the Z Fold 7 is 2600 nits of brightness on both screens, whereas the Pixel 10 Pro Fold is getting a little bit brighter. We'll go to an article here on Android Authority. Their reporting is that the 10 Pro Fold is going to jump up to 1850 nits on the inner screen and 2050 on the cover display. So it is getting brighter, but it's not anywhere really near the 2600 nits of brightness that you're going to be getting on the Z Fold 7. And as someone who has been spending a lot of time jumping around between phones, Oppo Find N5, Pixel 9 Pro Fold, Galaxy Z Fold 6, the Z Fold 6 is already the brightest of all of those phones. When I step outside, it's July. It's bright outside. It's sunny. When I step outside, it handles it better than any of those other phones, and I don't think that's going to change with the Z Fold 7 and the Pixel 10 Pro Fold. When you talk about the cameras, there's the camera hardware, but there's also the processing, the camera software. We know that Google's computational photography is absolutely fantastic, but we shouldn't talk about Samsung's like it's bad. Their only real problem, as far as I'm concerned, is going to be with the shutter speed, and that is something that has improved a little bit here as of late. If you look at just the hardware, though, on the primary sensors, Samsung clearly has the better primary sensor. It's a 200 megapixel sensor that is 1 over 1.13 inches. What the Pixel has is a 50 megapixel 1 over 2 inch sensor. It's the same one from the Pixel 9a. So Samsung's sensor is higher resolution and it is physically larger. Now, the Pixel has 0.8 micrometer pixels, the Samsung uses 0.6 micrometer pixels. But because of the resolution and pixel binning, the effective super pixel size is also going to go into Samsung's favor. This is just a better primary sensor. Now, again, Google's computational photography is fantastic, and when you compare the two side by side, I'm sure that the Pixel is going to hold its own just fine. But if we're just talking about who has the better hardware, it's Samsung by a long shot. We'll jump over to GSM Arena for a more detailed breakdown of the cameras from here. When you talk about the ultra wide on the Z Fold 7, it is a 12 megapixel sensor with 1.4 micrometer pixels. On the Pixel, this is the 9 Pro Fold, but I'm assuming it's going to be the same sensors. That's what the reporting has been, that only the primary is changing. So if we look at the ultra wide, it is a 10.5 megapixel sensor. They don't have the actual pixel size, but it is a 1 over 3.4 inch sensor. It is a very, very small sensor. I think the ultra wide, you probably got to lean Samsung. On the telephoto zoom, for the Samsung device, it's a 10 megapixel sensor with a 1 micrometer pixel, and it is 3x optical zoom. That is fairly lackluster as far as I'm concerned. Over on the Pixel, 10.8 megapixel sensor. It's actually 1 over 3.2 inches, and it is a 5x optical zoom. So I think I'd give the Pixel the zoom, and I would give Samsung everything else. It's also worth noting that the Z Fold 7 is sticking with IP48 dust and water resistance, and it's rumored that the Pixel might be jumping up to IP68. That would actually be real dust resistance, and that's going to matter to a lot of people. Now, you may notice I don't have battery and charging listed on there. I'll just quickly say it's probably going to be just like it currently is with the Fold 6 and the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, very, very similar. They are 200 milliamp hours apart in terms of battery size, leaning towards the Pixel being a little bit bigger, but the Samsung device charges about 4 watts faster as far as what's actually listed. In reality, when you actually charge them, because the Pixel tends to get a little bit warm and it throttles that charging speed, the Samsung phone actually charges significantly faster in my experience. Now, that might be aided a bit with the Tensor G5. Maybe the charging speed comes up for the Pixel, but battery life, charging speed, to me, I think it's probably going to be a bit of a wash. Neither one of them are going to touch these silicon carbon phones that have, almost 6,000 milliamp hour batteries with 80-watt charging. Neither one of them are going to be anywhere near that, but they're both probably going to get you through the day just fine, like they currently do, like the old models already do. Now, even though most of this, in terms of the hardware, I feel like has gone Samsung's way, maybe like 70-30 or something like that, one of Samsung's biggest advantages, historically speaking, has been their many exclusive features. But with the Z Fold 7, a lot of that seems like it might be going away. Some of it is literally going away, and some of it is being basically matched by Google. Take the S Pen, for example. Many of you have told me in the comments, that because the Fold 7 doesn't have S Pen compatibility, you're not buying it. That is something that would pull people towards the Z Fold that is no longer there. A lot of people have also told me over the years, I'm a big user of Samsung DeX. Well, guess what? Google is now making their own desktop mode. It's actually already out in the QPR1 betas, and it's already fairly functional. It's not that crazy to think that when the Pixel 10 Pro Fold comes out, that desktop mode might be ready to roll for that device, if not shortly after that. So you kind of have a DeX alternative on that device. So that's two big Samsung things that used to be selling features that just aren't a factor anymore. But that being said, even though I have long been a loud and proud supporter of Pixel phones because I love their software experience, I have to acknowledge that when it comes to foldable devices in particular, Samsung just has a more mature feature set. Pixel devices can still only split screen with 2 apps at a time, and they don't even have floating windows. This stuff matters. And even if you zoom out away from just foldable, like multitasking features, Samsung still has a ton of exclusive features like stackable widgets and enlarged folders. How about their routines section in their settings? And I know a lot of you really, really love. How about crazy amounts of customization through Good Lock? Or what about the fact that you can actually have built into the device separate layouts for your cover display and your inner screen? Yes, Pixel software is amazing, and I love a lot of what they do. But we can't pretend like Samsung has not built for themselves a really impressive, really mature, and thoughtful software suite that works great on the Z Fold devices. We even see Google pioneering new software ideas on Samsung devices. We're seeing, Google rolling out their live updates feature slowly but surely, and Samsung already has this up and running as the Now bar. That is basically the exact same thing Samsung users already have it. Now, don't get me wrong. When Google announces the 10 Pro Fold, they are going to have new exclusive features for that device. We have heard plenty of rumors about Pixel Sense or whatever they renamed it in the rumors, and maybe it's called something else. Now, there are going to be some exclusive features, and I think there are going to have to be exclusive features because, for my money, when you start weighing these things up, yes, the Pixel is cheaper. That's going to help it, obviously. And yes, the Pixel does have some exclusive software features. That's really going to be about it because I think Samsung software is also really good. And I think in most ways, their hardware is going to end up being superior. So, which way consumers go, I think is going to be a very, very interesting thing to watch. So, guys, from as much of an objective perspective as I think I could muster, that is what I think. But I would love to hear your subjective opinions in the comments down below. Which way are you leaning? Did the Z Fold 7 maybe disappoint and now you're waiting on the Pixel 10? Does the Pixel 10 look like just the Pixel 9 with maybe a couple more AI software tricks? And maybe you're looking at the superior, perhaps, hardware of the Z Fold 7 and thinking it's probably worth another $100 or $200 or whatever it ends up being. Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.